Welcome to the Rent Control Board meeting of August 4th. This is a meeting that's being recorded and broadcast on television. It'll be available on demand on our local Easton Cable Access Television network. And it is a Zoom meeting, so if people are watching at home and they have a question, please put it in the Q&A. Please make sure that you give us your name and street address for the minutes, and Sean will read the questions if there are any for that. So I do want to have the board introduce themselves. We do have a quorum. Jamie Stebbins is not here tonight, but...
I'm Jennifer Stacey.
Mark Lamb.
Craig Barger.
And I'm Dottie Fulgenetti, and we have our attorney, the town attorney, Kate Federoff, our town administrator, Connor Reed, assistant town administrator, Sean Dugan, and our senior executive assistant, Elizabeth Hegg. I just want to tell you a little bit about how the meeting is going to go, the order of the meeting. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone for being here tonight. We really appreciate you being here for this, and we're looking forward to a good discussion. And I think just to let you know the order of how we do things, Craig will be opening the hearing. Then we're going to invite the receiver, who's Attorney Morrissey, to come up and give us a little bit of a presentation with his counsel, Ethan Jeffries. If there's follow-up by the board at that point, the board will ask questions. Then we'll turn it over to the public. So when that happens, we'll invite raise your hand. I believe the president would like to speak first of the Tenants Association. So we'll have you come up to the microphone. You have to give us your name and your address for our minutes. And we're going to ask people to, because there's so many, we want to hear from everybody. We're going to ask you to keep it very brief, like 1 to 2 minutes. And if you're going to say something that somebody else said, don't repeat that all again, because we will run out of time and then we won't be able to hear from everybody, and we don't want to do that. So we are not going to answer every question or have back and forth during that period, but I will take notes, and if there's a common theme or something that we should address, we will talk about it after everybody's had a chance to speak. Then the board, if we have follow-up questions with Attorney Morrissey, we'll ask those, and then the board will talk and deliberate and we'll vote. There won't be any cross-talking amongst each other or calling out to Attorney Morrissey directly. If we have a question, I will ask Attorney Morrissey as the chair. So it should be very smooth, and I hope everybody feels welcomed and feels that they got an opportunity for us to hear what you have to say. We do have more people than chairs tonight, so there is a conference room down the hall to the left that does have chairs, and you can watch this on the broadcast. If you want to do that to be more comfortable, please do that. And if you have a question when it comes to the public comment period, you can come down here and just get in line for that. So we do appreciate your patience with that. So Craig, if you want to read the public notice.
Good evening, everybody. In accordance with Chapter 30A of the General Laws, Chapter 88 of the Acts of 2013, and the rules and regulations adopted on December 16, 2013, the Easton Rent Control Board will hold a public hearing at 6 p.m. on Monday, August 4th, 2025, having been continued from July 14, 2025, in the Colleen A. Corona Boardroom, Easton Town Offices, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass. The hearing will consider the petition submitted by D. Ethan Jeffrey of Murphy and King on behalf of Frank C. Morrissey, Esquire, as receiver for a rent increase for property located at 305 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass. Said petition being treated as a petition for general rent increase under the board's regulations.
Great. So we're going to ask Attorney Morrissey and Ethan to come up to the table, and while you do that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on this. So following years of the former owner failing to comply with various local and state orders to repair the infrastructure at the Easton Mobile Home Park, and upon petitions of this board, supported by Town Council Mead, Tellerman, and Costa, and upon petitions of and the court's appointed receiver, Frank Morrissey, Esquire, that order is included in our packet along with background information and so forth. Consistent with that order, the receiver pursued and the courts granted an auction process to sell the mobile home park to a competent buyer. This was substantially delayed by various appeals, including appeals from the former owner, Morgan, for so long that eventually the courts ordered any further appeals be accompanied by a $2 million bond so that they couldn't just keep putting frivolous appeals. The proposed buyer, Crown Communities, has stuck with us through this whole thing. So congratulations to them and to Attorney Morrissey for keeping that going. And we have a lot of paperwork the board has that we've reviewed in preparation for the meeting tonight. I will say that I'm the only one on the board who's been here through the whole thing, and Select Person Barger has been here the next longest. So we're very well aware of what's going on down at the park, and we're anxious to hear from Attorney Morrissey. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Chairperson Fulganetti, for this opportunity to speak in support of a rent increase. Let me start with the solution. As set forth in our application, the rent increase is necessary to repair and replace the failing infrastructure of the park and to maintain the park as a manufactured housing community. And without the rent increase, we're, I believe, out of runway. But let me start with some history. The problems at the park predate my appointment by more than a decade. The violation of the health, safety, and environmental laws of the park were first identified by the town in 2011. In 2014, this board found, and I'm going to quote, that Easton MHC, Morgan, had neglected the park, and that as a result of the neglect, substandard conditions exist with respect to the wastewater disposal system, drainage system, abandoned property, and the roadway delivery network. That's 2014. When Morgan refused to address these critical issues, the board reduced the monthly rent at the park to $200. This is well before my appointment. And when Morgan continued to refuse to address these life safety issues at the park, this board in 2018, 7 years ago, commenced a lawsuit in Superior Court to require Morgan to do what he was supposed to do, which is to repair and replace the infrastructure and bring the park up to standards. Morgan's response was to continue to refuse and to appeal and to be obstructionist. It's important to note that Morgan had multiple bites at the apple. Morgan had multiple opportunities to address the health and safety issues at the park, but refused to do so. And as a result, Judge Green appointed me as receiver of the park in January 2020. There's a lot of confusion about my role as receiver. Receiver is not a landlord. Receiver is not a real estate investor. A receiver is a representative of the court, an agent of the court. I take directions from the court. I report to the court, and I'm responsible to the court. I've operated this park since January 2020, and I think the numbers are very, very illuminating. I've collected approximately $2 million in rent over the last 5.5 years. $1,980,000 approximately has been reinvested back in the park, and I have $19,000 in the bank. So,
Remember, I had said, please don't call out like that. Please don't interrupt people when they're talking, okay? Thank you.
I've collected $2 million.
I'm going to ask you, please, one more time, do not interrupt, or this is going to take forever, and it's going to become very frustrating for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've collected $2 million in the last 5.5 years, and I've spent $1,982,000, $19,000 in the bank. Every dollar I collected essentially has been reinvested back in the park. Every dollar. Of the $1.9 million, about $1.3 million has gone to the wastewater and the water delivery systems. Among other things, we've replaced every pump at the lift stations during my tenure. We've also replaced big sections of the underground pipe. You know, unfortunately, that substantial investment wasn't enough. And I know why a lot of you here, and I agree with you. The condition of the park remains dire. And there's a real risk, a substantial risk, that the wastewater delivery system and the water delivery system and the wastewater delivery system will fail. In fact, there's a substantial risk that the system will fail imminently, like this month or next month. You people here in the hearing know better than anyone. We've had emergency repairs done not less than 7 times in the last 2 months. Sora Sanitation and Knowles Enterprises have been to the park on an emergency basis to deal with ruptures and other problems, failed pumps, 7 times in the last 2 months. The current situation is unsustainable. I have $19,000 in the bank. I owe Knowles Enterprises approximately $100,000 right now. Simply put, we're out of runway. Continuing to maintain the infrastructure, much less repair and replace it, is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, money that the park doesn't have. I estimate that it'll cost approximately $2 million to do the infrastructure replacement that's necessary, the capital improvements that's necessary. Again, I only have $19,000 in the bank. There's just not enough resources in the park right now to do the repairs, do the replacement, and maintain the park as a residential manufactured home community. Let's be very clear. The current conditions of the park are the result of years, more than a decade of neglect and underinvestment by Morgan. We currently don't have the resources in the receivership estate to bring the park back up to standards. And as a practical matter, the only way to maintain this park as a manufactured housing community is to sell the park to a buyer with the expertise and the resources necessary to bring the park back into compliance with the sanitary code and to replace all these failed systems. We have identified such a buyer, and the chairperson identified them at the outset of the hearing, Crown Communities. Crown has the resources and the experience necessary to bring this park back. And more importantly, Crown has agreed to be accountable, not just to the court, but to the town and to the residents. It's a contractual obligation that each resident and the town are third-party beneficiary of the transaction that we're trying to close with Crown. Following the closing, Crown will be required to do repairs and replacements in accordance with a heavily negotiated schedule. And the town was part of that negotiation. And if they don't meet their obligations, the people in the room, as well as the town, have a remedy, and they can hold Crown accountable. Crown has resources that the park does not have. And there's more. Under the transaction with Crown, it's a part of the purchase and sale agreement. Crown is required after closing the sale to maintain this park as a mobile home housing community for 2.5 years after the closing. And they're also required to invest the capital necessary to maintain it in perpetuity. Let me talk about the need for the rent increase and just back up a little bit. I was appointed in 2020, right at the outset, January 2nd, 2020. I'm sure everyone remembers that COVID hit shortly after my appointment. That slowed everything down. That slowed down the sale process, slowed down our process for identifying a buyer. It also slowed down the court machinery necessary to get approval for all of these transactions. The Superior Court approved the sale to Crown in June 2022, 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago. The closing was delayed because Morgan again interposed frivolous appeals to the sale order. And Crown couldn't get title insurance, couldn't get financing with these appeals pending. And the wheels of justice turn slowly, as they say, but they grind fine, but they turn slowly. They grind fine, but they turn slowly. It took us 3 years, 2 years to get those frivolous appeals broomed out. And in the meantime, we've had hundreds of thousands of dollars of unpaid accrued expenses. Again, I mentioned I owe the wastewater professionals $100,000. There's been water leaks and a whole array of expenses that were not anticipated in 2022 that were incurred solely because Morgan interposed this frivolous appeal. I'm asking for a rent increase so that we can't close with any outstanding water bills and administrative expenses and payments due to wastewater professionals. We have to have sufficient funds to pay the accrued expenses of the park to get to a closing with Crown. And the rent increase is needed to fund this shortfall. The shortfall was caused by the appeals that weren't opposed in 2022 that took so long to get addressed by the appeals court. The good news is that if we can fund the closing budget, we can transfer this park to Crown. Crown has committed to buying the park within 30 days of an order approving the proposed rent increase. And once Crown closes, Crown will be obligated to bring this park into compliance. Crown will be required to replace the wastewater infrastructure, replace the water delivery infrastructure, get rid of the abandoned units, deal with the potholes in the road. Crown will be accountable, Crown will be responsible, and the board will closely monitor Crown. And under the contract that was negotiated by my counsel, Ethan Jeffrey, every resident of the park will have standing to enforce the obligations to bring the infrastructure back into compliance. So I understand that a rent increase is a bitter pill to swallow, given the current state of the park. But I respectfully submit that this is the only way to maintain the park as a manufactured home community. And if we get the rent increase and we close with Crown, we're going to have someone with the expertise and the resources that will be contractually obligated to deliver what Morgan should have delivered more than 10 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Frank, I want to thank you, and I just want to, I think there's a couple of pieces that I'd like to underscore. So when this board fought for like 2 years in court to ask the court to appoint a receiver to get the park out of the hands of Morgan so that we'd have a pathway forward, and they appointed Frank. Frank's role was two things: either find a buyer through a process that takes a few months to do, or to determine whether the park should be closed. Those were the two choices. And he worked really hard to make sure that he found a buyer, that it worked, that the park didn't close, because if the park closes, everybody has to be displaced. And so I really appreciate the work that you put in through that. Also, this process is supposed to take less than a year. And with COVID and all the delays, it's been like 5 years. Frank hasn't gotten paid. The receiver is supposed to get a nominal fee. It costs him money to do this. And for all of these years to do this and stick with it and to keep Crown engaged and interested in it, I really want to thank you for that on behalf of the board. We really appreciate it, because the last thing that we wanted to have to do was to see displacement of people in the park. So that was a lot of work, is a lot of work, and I know that we've had conversations. It's been very stressful to you. You've been very concerned, very worried about the people that live there and the conditions, and saying that the people that live in that park deserve to have better than that. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think we're close. I think if we can get this transaction closed with Crown, we can pivot and turn this situation around and get the park to where it needs to be. Thank you very much.
All right, if you want to go sit in your seats over there, we're going to allow people to come up. Again, Dennis, if you want to come up first and introduce yourself and make your comments.
Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, why am I saying Dennis? Mark, sorry. Come on up. I'm looking right at you.
I get to sit down or I have to stand up?
Wherever you'd like.
Wherever you're more
Take a few
comfortable.
minutes.
Well, it's got to be brief, less than like 3-4 minutes, okay?
How many minutes do you have?
I'm running the meeting, and we're trying to get a hold of everyone, so I'm
I'm
going
gonna read your bylaws.
No,
first.
you're not going to read the bylaws. If you have comments, please, hold on, please. I can't hear. If you
On,
want to,
against,
if you
and
want to
why.
make comments, you've got less than 5 minutes, because we have to hear from everybody here, so please
Right.
keep it brief.
Okay. Well, I'm at a big disadvantage here because I'm not a lawyer. But, you know, that said, I've been living in this park for 15 years, okay? And through the whole 15 years of courts, okay? Finally went to the receiver. And the receiver said quote unquote, it was all recorded that he would get the park up to speed. Well, the first 6 months, 9 months was great, and things were looking better. He said he had a surplus of money, and things were getting done. What it says in the bylaws, I'm gonna read real quick, okay? Fair market value, and the fair market value of the property shall mean current assessed valuation of manufactured housing accommodations or manufactured housing communities and other evaluations of said accommodations, community that the board, that's the rent control board, on the basis of evidence presented before them, consider more appropriate to the circumstances of the case before it. The board may request a certified appropriate to circumstances of the case before it. The board may request a certified appraisal, because 5 years ago and 5 years later, the place is worth less. So, and I know it was all COVID, okay? I'm gonna blame COVID, but it was 5 years, he was getting rents, and I know Morgan appealed it, and that shouldn't have been appealed the last time because he didn't never put up the $2 million bond, okay? I went to court in Boston, I was there. Okay, so I'm gonna ask to evaluate the evidence presented by the party regarding the fair market value of our park now. And that's a lot. So, and the maximum rate of the rent increase is, you have to go by that, all right? Not like $200 or something, okay? And then, it's supposed to be line 6, page, okay, a copy of the rental housing agreement on any rules and regulations applicable to tenancy thereunder. The owner shall update, this is the receiver should be doing, update registration annually by June 30th of each year. It's never been done. The registration forms shall be accompanied by an affidavit or certificate of owner signed under pains and penalties and perjury and information thereof, true, complete, and accurate. That hasn't been done. Okay, I'm gonna go fast as I can. The board may such individual on general adjustments either upwards or downwards on the rent increase, upwards or downwards. The board may schedule a standard rental increase or decrease for improvement or deterioration in the specific services and facilities. Okay, general adjustments of rent. Okay, owner, if a petition was filed by the tenants, which we're at a disadvantage, excuse me, and we don't have a lawyer, but it says right here in the bylaws that were here, okay? And accompanied by financial statements for up to 3 years, okay? Filing of notice of claim. Such statement should clearly set forth income, sources of income, and detailed breakdown of operating expenses, or such other financial statements of the board shall be requested. And interim updated financial statements showing income and operating expenses for each current year. We never got that. A statement of number of employees, job titles, and descriptions of any employees who employment relates to the effective mobile home park. I don't know if he has any employees. I never see any employees. There's some contractors. Okay, and I'm gonna skip that part. We're gonna go back to this because, okay. An application for certificate of eviction which fails to comply with foregoing provisions of this paragraph shall not be produced until such defects have been corrected or removed. All right. Oh, I mean, I could read more, but all right, let me get to this part. Okay. So we got here, Easton, Massachusetts. established a rent control board to regulate rents, evictions, and housing standards specifically within the mobile home communities. If you need to file a petition related to the concerns regarding the rents, evictions, or housing standards within the Easton mobile home community, here's how you can proceed. There's a lot, so that's what I said. We're at a big disadvantage because we don't have a lawyer. He resigned, Tom Aylesworth. I know you know he was working for us, but he wasn't really working for us. Okay? And the liens on the property, all right? There's a lot of liens. And what I found out, okay, from Crown, Alex, that it was supposed to go through, the sale was supposed to go through, but everything was not in order. Like I said, he's supposed to do every year by June 30th. Every year. A statement of new. And don't even know, I don't even know people that are in our park. And it's getting really scary, okay? No, really scary. So, and we had to pay for porta potties, okay? Because nobody was doing anything. We had to pay for rubbish removal because it wasn't being done. You know that big heat wave we have was in June, okay? It was disgusting, okay? So we, as the board of the park, had to take an emergency vote and get the dumpsters emptied. And oh my God, when they emptied those dumpsters and the trash all over, dozens of rats were feeding on that. And, you know, there was rat bait traps put around the park, but that hasn't been paid either. So Orkin's not coming in to do that. I mean, we do what we can, and we try to tell people, make sure you take your trash, don't leave your trash around, because the whole country has a rodent problem. Yeah. But not emptying the trash is gonna make it a lot worse.
Okay.
Right?
Thank
And
you.
like I said, the COVID, you could say COVID, but he was supposed to still be getting the rents. I don't understand what happened from the first year. Everything was great, and then all of a sudden, it's not so great.
Okay, so we'll address that after we hear from everybody. I've made some notes.
Like I
and,
said,
we'll
we
bring
paid
it
for the porta potties. They're still there. There's people with no working toilets. They can't wash their clothes. They can't take showers. Multiple homes. Okay?
Yeah.
All right?
No, we understand, and I
Okay.
appreciate you
All right.
sharing all that.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
on lock.
Okay, if you want to speak, raise your hand and I'll ask you to come up. Lynn, come on up.
Dottie,
That name.
if you could just ensure people state their full name and address for the minutes, please.
Lynn, could you just say your name and address for the minute?
My name is Lynn Cleveland. I live at number 74 at Easton Mobile Home Park. Now, since the receiver took over, I was on the board at that time, and my understanding was he was supposed to take the rent, cash the rent, and take care of the park. Also bring in a manager. We had a manager for 4 months. And then I was told he went to court to get rid of the manager because he couldn't afford him. Well, he wasn't cashing our checks. Okay, this went on it's still going on, I believe, that he's not cashing checks on time. He gets the checks at between the 1st and 15th of the month. They should have gone through by the 30th of the month. They don't go through because he didn't cash them. I finally sent him a letter saying, I'm sending you bank checks. I no longer, because I have assistance, I no longer want to send you checks because I have $3,000 sitting in the bank waiting for you to cash a check. And I would like to see a paper saying what he has paid for through these 4 or 5 years, because that's what he's supposed to show us, is what he has spent his money on. But like when he talks about the rats, I had rats galore. And I finally got rid of them all. I just had one the other day. But I got rid of them.
Well, glad to hear that.
But this has been going on too long. And when we got a receiver, we thought we were, hallelujah, we're going to be saved. He's going to take the rent, put it towards repairs, get ourselves repaired.
Yeah.
When I found out that when Crown was going to buy us last October, that he owed over $500,000 on a water bill, and that's the reason it didn't get bought, I said, what the heck is this guy doing? He's supposed to be a lawyer? Hello? Wake up, people.
Thanks, Lim. In the back row? Sorry, I don't know everybody's names, and
I'm fast.
I wrote. Don't try to trick me, Mark. If you could please give us your name and address.
My name's Jennifer Reynolds, and I have number 59. The problem with wanting to pay this man more money is that the front of the park, do you know how many squatters we have up there? Do you know how many people who aren't paying rent? So the rest of us have to pay for all of them for his rent increase? And that's not fair to the people who pay. They'll continue to live there and squat. He does nothing. And the repairs that he said he's had people in there making, that's a joke. My next door neighbor's had a water leak for over 6 months, and in the last 2 years, he's a veteran, open heart surgery. The man has no hot water. None, because there's not enough water pressure. He Band-Aids it. So he fixes his, and it goes down the line, and it's gonna pop, and he'll put a Band-Aid on it. There's 3 leaks in there right now. And there have not been people in there in the last 7 days or even the last 2 weeks. It's not fair to the rest of us that pay, that we should have to pay for them. That's not fair.
Thank you.
You know, that's, you know, I have a set income, a lot of us do.
Yep.
We're gonna pay and they're gonna continue to live, they're gonna continue to live off all of us.
Nope, that's going to change as well.
And that's not fair. And I can't afford that kind of money to put in a park that doesn't reinvest.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the flag shirt, come on up.
Aaron Movsesian, Unit 233.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name. Can you say it again?
Aaron Movsesian, Unit 233. One question I have is, I understand everything that Frank said. Why are the residents having to absorb the cost of all that stuff? And he admitted, and we all know, that those problems have been going on for years and years and years. Why isn't Morgan? Why aren't you guys, why isn't, the receiver filing a lawsuit against Morgan to recoup that money instead of having it fall back on the residents? I mean, can we get that question answered, or is there?
Yep, I'm going to answer all the questions that we can at the end.
Thank you.
Dottie, I think there's a hand.
Go ahead, come on up.
Hi, my name's Brenda Carter. I live at Trailer 15. My concern is if this rent increase should go through, are we going to be faced with a new owner that will immediately increase it again? And I would like to know if there's going to be some kind of protection from that happening, because we'll get priced out of our homes and we won't be able to afford to stay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Sure, come on up.
There's somebody over here.
My name is Lena Shea. I live at 190 Rockland Street. I do not live in that trailer home. I'm here as a person in the community that has lived in Easton for 25 years, and I want them to know that I hear you, and I hope the best for all of you in this situation, and I'm very sorry. There is a disabled, nonverbal autistic child that lives in that neighborhood, the 2 veterans that live in that neighborhood, and I drive by not paying attention, and a few months back, I noticed, and I got involved, and my friend in the back is here too, that people are starting to see it, and it's not fair that we live in Easton. It doesn't matter what your home looks like, how much you paid for it. Everybody deserves to have peace of mind.
And I clap for you. Anyone else? If people are in the other room down the hall and you want to come in and ask a question, please come on down. For people that are in the hall out here, if you didn't know, down the end of the hall, there's a room to the left where there's another little conference room and a video broadcast. You can go down there as well. Briefly, sure.
Aaron Movsesian, Unit 233. Is it possible that, like, for the receiver to start doing some of these repairs and showing sign of good faith? I mean, he's asking for a rent increase, and we're not seeing anything. We're not seeing any results, any actions. So I'm sure it's difficult for all of us to swallow that, to say, okay, well, we're going to give you more money for what? You're not doing anything now. So I don't know if there's a way to do something, sign of good faith.
So if there's no more questions, I'll just try to start to answer some of these questions. So the goal of where we are right now.
Should we be closing the hearing
sure.
to testimony?
Are you going to take any more evidence? Are you going to ask Frank any questions? Or are you going to try to answer the questions and then ask Frank
The
to
question
come
is
back
if you're
up?
going to close it to new testimony or not.
Yes.
It
And
is-
if we have a question for Frank, we can still ask
Then
it.
don't close it. Then
Okay.
do not close
Okay,
it.
don't.
Then
I'll be real quick.
No,
have to
oh,
come
no,
up to the microphone.
sorry, you have to, it won't get
and
picked up
after
by
this,
cable.
I'm gonna close testimony, and then there'll be no more comments from the public. So
Again, Jennifer Reynolds, I just want you guys to all know that the maintenance done in that park, the lawns, are being done by a tenant that lives there for free. A gentleman and his friend who have gone and bought rocks out of their own pockets and go and fill in our potholes. It's the park, our tenants are maintaining that. If it was up to him, the grass would be almost as tall as I am. And that's not right either. So we have no management company and we have no outlet.
right.
That's it.
You're going to ask follow-ups with Frank, correct, Kate?
Yes, exactly.
All right.
So you're going to have Frank.
Leave it open until that's done.
All right. One more question, Lynn.
Or,
Just be careful of those chairs because they bow out a little bit in the front. I don't want you to trip.
Like I said, where is the statement of how much money he spent and where he spent it at? He hasn't given you any.
He has.
He hasn't given you anything to tell us how he's spending the money and
He
where
has.
it's being. He has?
We have it. Yes.
We'd like to see it.
Does the board have it?
We'd love to see it.
Because I have not seen, and the only repairs I've seen in there is emergency repairs.
That's all.
Right now, I got a massive leak in front of my house,
Yeah.
massive leak. That's why they don't have any water down the street. But it's just, and you call them, and it's like, who are you? What do you want me to do about it?
Yeah.
Or he'll pass this on to Mr. Jeffries, which I want to thank him very much for helping me when I needed help.
Thank you.
thank you.
But it just, I'm hard of hearing, and I have to ask this question to you, Dottie. Did you say that if we got a rent increase, that Crown would move in and take over the park?
Yes.
And the lien would go away? All the liens against the Kelso and the lien against the you people? Would that disappear?
Well,
Ask Kate to answer that.
Yes, so that's all negotiated in the purchase and sale agreement. The whole idea of this rent increase is that Crown will close within 30 days. So you will have a new owner. And that
Okay, now the rent
owner-
would be what? No more than $100 more?
Pardon?
No more than $100?
What is no
The
more?
rent increase?
The rent increase that they're asking for tonight is for 200.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
People can't afford that.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
All right, please, everybody, I'm going to ask you to please stop calling out like that. Let Lynn finish what she's saying.
No, that really is too much. because many people are living on the Social Security, many people are disabled, and also, I think the law states you cannot bring it up $200. $100 is the max.
I understand the concern here, and the idea is that this increase will
Just because
allow-
just because Mr. Morrissey did not do his job, you're going to say we have to pay?
So the $250 represents actually the amount of.
you just said 200.
You cut me off. I couldn't hear you. So 250 is the proposed rent increase, and what that actually.
Yeah, I can't hear her, people.
Okay. So if you actually take the last rent increase and then add on the consumer price index increase year over year, it would amount to what he's asking for now. And if this were to pass, Crown would close within 30 days. And there's a possibility of the board, if they were so inclined to allow the rent increase to, am I speaking loud enough for you? Is it okay? You're okay?
I'm understanding. I'm
Okay,
studying,
good.
but I'm understanding.
Good, no, I just wanted to make sure. So the idea is then they would have sufficient cash flow to begin the reinvestment process into the property, because what had been happening is there are rents that were not being paid. You're absolutely right. There are people who are squatting
He
and
doesn't
not
go
paying
after
rent.
them.
Yeah, because it takes resources to do that, right? You have to come with a lawyer to the rent control board and do an eviction process. Then it goes an appeal to the court. And all of that takes sufficient resources to do so. Whereas Crown, with the fact that they own and operate several mobile home parks, have the capacity to execute on those legal actions, right? And what the money that was collected, what that was used for was to solve immediate and urgent issues, and it didn't solve it for sure, because to someone's point, and I'm not exactly sure which woman was up here who mentioned it, you fix a leak and then another one springs down the pipe.
That's the leak that I have in my place.
Oh, that's your leak. Okay.
10 years ago, we were told by the maintenance man that he asked Morgan to replace the pipe all the way down the street.
Right.
And Morgan said it cost too much money.
Exactly. And so the idea is when you bring Crown in, because when you fix these problems and then it goes just further down the pipe and a new leak springs, you've already used those resources and you have to find more resources to fix the next spring. And the idea is that Crown will come in and do those full comprehensive replacements that are necessary, so one correction isn't triggering a new problem, right? So that's what I believe Frank is asking for the rent increase tonight for, to make it so there is a market rate rent, so there's sufficient cash flow. That, coupled with the existing resources that Crown has, given it's a large company with many communities that it operates, those two things will help give long-term solutions rather than Band-Aids, because that's what's been happening for 5 years, is simply Band-Aids, putting out fires where you can. And that's the idea behind the rent increase today, to get Frank out of it. We do thank him for the work that he did, which was expected to be 1 year and then turned out to be 5 years because of all of these
He's done a
pieces of
very poor
litigation.
job at it.
Yeah, and this is a way to get a new body in there who's really an owner rather than an officer of the court.
Well, how do you expect people that have trouble paying rent now at $468 to pay $4, $5, $6, be about $725?
I understand it's a big jump.
It
It's
would
a
go
big
from
jump.
448.
It's gonna be a very
to
big
Could we,
690.
could we
Especially
clarify?
for people that are on assistance and
Yeah.
just can't do it.
All right.
So
Linda,
I would ask,
wrap it up.
I would ask the chair just to clarify from a receiver's application requested 698. Is that, can I just have a nod if that's correct? Thank you. I'm not saying that that's a cheap deal. I just want to be
What they're proposing is
698.
Crown agreed to come in at 468, and he talked to him
Sorry,
myself at 468 as our rent, and then in 2 years, he would go up with the rent. So I don't understand when that's not what Crown told all of us.
Okay, well, we're going to answer some questions now. So the first question about the bylaws. So when Attorney Morrissey is the receiver, he's not the owner. Those bylaws are meant for the park owner. Morrissey's job, his only job, was to collect rents and use that money to put out any kind of extraordinary capital problems like water leaks, things like that. And they weren't able to be all done completely because he didn't have enough money. There wasn't enough money from people paying their rent and from the people not paying their rent. So he has to pay people out of that money to come in and fix things. That's why he had to get rid of the manager. If there's not enough money to pay people, he's been able to get some of these vendors haven't been paid yet, as he said. There's $19,000 left in the account. When these things are talked about, like when Crown said, you know, what rent might be, that was 2 years ago. Like, this place is falling apart. Nobody knows this better than you and your fellow neighbors that live there. So we're excited that there's an opportunity to move forward, because the only choice is to be able to have the rent increase, have Crown buy it. If that doesn't happen and Crown walks away, the only other option is to close the park. So it's a rock and a hard place. I say that with great sympathy and understanding for people that this is going to be a hardship. But the faster that this park gets up and running, that people get removed from the park that shouldn't be there, that aren't paying rent, and get evictions, get the place back in condition where people do want to move in and the resources are spread more evenly. That's really the pathway out. So that was just to address Mark's concerns about the bylaws.
Well, I got a rebuttal on it.
No rebuttal. We're just going through the questions here. The other question was, why are we not suing Morgan? Because that was the whole point in getting a receiver. You can sue and sue and sue. They don't have any money. So what are we going to get for that? And, you know, the rent control board is not authorized to do things like that. So that, you know, a lot of the things that we wanted to do back, you know, with Morgan, we wanted to reduce the rent to the $200 because we said to them, until you start to show us that you're going to do something in the park, we're going to lower the rent. We'll raise it back up when you start to do anything. We figured that would put pressure on them, that they would have to start doing anything, and it didn't work. So, you know, we tried that. We've tried to work with them many times in the past, and it was just broken promises, which is why we spent the time, the resources, and taxpayer money to get this attorney put in place to be the receiver. The other question Brenda had was, after this happens, will Crown raise the rent again, and is there any protection? The goal is not to raise the rent again. If there is a question about that, we are the rent control board. They'd have to come back here. And so what we want to do is get this money moving, have them come in, make comprehensive repairs that are going to last. They've got the whole list. They know what it is, and really, you'll see some very dramatic improvements when they come on. And the receiver was not tasked to make permanent full-time repairs. It was whatever money they have, do with what they have. And if this had happened within a year like it should have, everything would have been moving ahead, and we wouldn't be in this situation. And we know how horrible it is. We hear it. We know many of the people that live there, and we know, you know, we appreciate hearing that, you know, the water leaks problems, the people not paying their rent. It shouldn't be borne across just a small group of people. Everybody there needs to contribute. So I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions. Oh,
Whoops.
my computer is talking to me.
Siri.
Jen, did you have any comments or
Can we
questions?
start with Craig and go down? Because I feel like I have the least history with this, and it would be beneficial to see.
Craig, do you have any questions or comments?
One of the comments that I think Lynn said was the question about the number of people who are not paying rent, and I was curious whether or not we have that data, or how many of the people who are living there aren't paying the rent. I don't know, Frank, if you have that information, or
We haven't.
Dottie, he should come up to the,
Frank,
Frank,
if
if Frank,
you
can
wanna
you
here.
come up, please?
Sorry.
There were substantial deficiencies in the payment of rent. And we have a list of people who haven't paid, and it's a substantial number. The problem is what the chairperson pointed out, it's one thing to bring a lawsuit, it's another to get paid. And we've been successful in bringing in a significant amount of money from the deficiencies when mobile homes are sold. When a mobile home is sold, if the buyer has got financing, the banks typically ask for a clean bill of health from the receiver. And my counsel and I insist that all accrued rent be paid and taken right out of closing. So there are a substantial amount of people that aren't paying rent, and to be honest with you, there's some of the people in the room today. It's counterproductive. The only way we can fix the park up is to get money into the park, is to collect rent. And Crown will have to take a look closely at who's been paying and who hasn't, and make adjustments. And that's what Crown specializes in.
The other thing of noting, as Attorney Fedorov said, is that to have evictions, you use the word resources, but basically it's money. It costs money to evict people, and for you to take the choice of you spend time and money out of that bucket, that limited bucket of money to evict people, and you need that money to fix things as they break, where are you going to spend the money? So that,
It's a
I hope,
triage,
answers
correct.
the question.
I'll pass to Mark for the moment. I may have other questions.
I have no questions at the moment. I'm really just taking this all in. It's very clear that your living conditions are completely unacceptable. My goal is for you to not be living under those conditions. My goal is also for you to not have to leave where you live. And those are the two options, Crown or the park closes. That's it. The only way Crown can take this over is if rent is increased and everybody pays their rent. That's it. I wish there was a third solution presented before this board, but I don't see one. I don't want to be in this position. None of you want to be in this position, but at this rate, how much longer can you guys live in these conditions that continue to deteriorate? I can't believe you're still living there. I can't picture in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, things are not going to improve in the current situation. They're just not. What we need to do is get you guys out of this receivership. Have to. It's the only way out. So after having heard everything I heard, those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Mark.
I just want to extend my sympathy to all of you for the situation that we're hearing about. This is truly unacceptable, and I'm also hoping that we find a solution that puts things on a path to resolution. I know it's going to take time and it's going to take resources, and like Mark said, as representative of the board, my best interest is to make sure we find a path that is palatable and also holds folks accountable looking ahead. So my only question, and I'm not sure if Frank, this is a question for you or for Kate, but just for you made the point earlier about residents will have some accountability when it comes to Crown as the owner. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like? Maybe offer some reassurance to folks.
Yes, well, if Crown or whoever buys the park becomes the owner, they're liable for all the health and safety and sanitary laws, just like any other owner. In addition, the transaction that my counsel and I negotiated has a timetable, a mandated timetable to seek permits and to start the repair and replacement work. If those milestones aren't met, the town and the rent control board are third-party beneficiaries under the contract and can bring it to court and compel the buyer to meet the milestones. In addition, the residents are all third-party beneficiaries of the contract. And they too have the ability to go to court or come to the rent control board and explain why things aren't being done in accordance with the timetable. My expectation is the town has been very hands-on. The town has been very, very much a good player in this whole situation, been part of the solution. My expectation is Crown's going to have their work cut out for them when they close in 30 days if the board goes with the rent increase. My expectation is this board is going to be very diligent and monitor closely all the things that Crown's supposed to do and make sure they do it. And I'm sure if there's a problem with, and I don't expect there will be, but if Crown doesn't do what they're required to do, then the residents can come back to the board, and the board and the residents can hold Crown accountable. So, but it's right in addition to the statute, in addition to your obligations as owner, it's right in the contract. And the third way that the board can hold Crown accountable is if Crown isn't a good actor, then the rent can be adjusted downwards if the milestones aren't being met and if progress isn't being made. But I think the point was made tonight. I'm not a developer. I'm not a mobile home park manager. I'm a lawyer. And it was supposed to be a short-term engagement. And between COVID and appeals and litigation, it turned out to be a longer-term engagement. I can't emphasize enough that the park is in very fragile condition right now, and we could be dealing with a systems failure imminently. And lawsuits and other alternatives, we don't have time to pursue them. We're really sort of at the end of the road. And Crown is the best way to get this park back where it should be. And that's why I've asked for the rent increase to get to a closing and get to a responsible owner.
And Crown has made a commitment, has to keep the park for 2.5 years.
And it's right in the contract. And this was something the town negotiated for aggressively. Crown can't do anything with the park except maintain it as a manufactured housing community for 2.5 years. My other expectation is, there's other law that applies to shutting down a park as a residential community. My other expectation is if the investments are made in the timely basis that the contract requires, then the community is going to be, extend far beyond the 2.5 years. The use will extend far beyond the 2.5 years.
Can I talk about the infrastructure?
And can I just add one other thing before I forget? You also had a conversation with Crown as late as this afternoon.
Yes,
that
I
they
got an
are
email.
still interested.
So I
and
spoke
eager
to
move forward.
I spoke to Alex Cabot several times this month. I think Ethan reminded me, we entered an APA with Crown in 2021, if you can believe it. And then we had an auction in 2022, we had a court hearing in June of 2022, we got a sale order from the Superior Court in 2022, and then several frivolous appeals were interposed, and it took 2 years to address them. And in the meantime, the expenses continued to run, all of the accruals continued to move ahead. And when we originally entered into the agreement with Crown, there was sufficient funds in the contract to close in 2022. But now, 3 years later, there isn't. And Crown has stepped up and is increasing the purchase price so that we can pay the accruals and get this park where it should be.
Dottie, could I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So for the board's benefit, but also for our residents here, I could understand how frustrating this is 15 years in, right? And to have folks in suits tell you this will be the time it's going to work. One of the things that's important, it's been alluded to a few times, but I want to clarify, is what the receiver is referring to as a commitment is a written contractual commitment by Crown. And Frank, I'll ask you to confirm that what I'm referring to as the infrastructure commitment and the infrastructure repairs, is that still in the post-closing agreement?
That is a post-closing agreement where Crown is required to seek permits and actually implement the infrastructure repairs.
Right.
That agreement was part of the record before the Superior Court and approved by the Superior Court. I'm happy to make it available to any resident that's interested in it.
So I have a piece of it here that I think is important, and then I'll ask a question for our council to clarify the board's role of continued regulation and ability to enforce if things don't go as we want them to, right? Because I think everyone here has wanted to see the infrastructure be repaired for a very, very, very long time. And I don't think anyone here is happy that it's not. and correct me if it's been amended, but the post-closing agreement states an infrastructure commitment by the buyer is to, within 6 months of closing, file documents necessary to obtain the permits and authorizations required to commence work on infrastructure repairs, and commence work on the infrastructure repairs within 30 days of receipt of such permits and authorization, and to complete those repairs in a timely fashion, but not later than 30 months from the receipt of permits and authorizations, with the ability to extend the completion date for 9 months for good cause. Infrastructure repairs shall mean repairing or replacing the real estate sewer system, underground wastewater collection system, sewage lift stations, underwater pipes, stormwater management system, drainage system, and roadways, such that the real estate complies with applicable state and federal laws, including the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and Easton's Wetland Protection Bylaw. So I think it's important to highlight that provision of the agreement, which again, the receiver is representing Crown will be willing to execute based on this increase. And for the town's council, could you clarify if the board is wishing, considers or approves the receiver's request tonight, and then the closing does not happen, what recourse does the board have?
The board has the absolute right to decrease rents, right? So the board has limited authority, but rent control is right in the name of the board, right? So they decide whether to increase, whether to decrease. And I think the part that, just to clarify, because sometimes there are legal terms that are thrown around and not everyone knows what they mean. When Frank refers to the town of Easton being a third-party beneficiary, right, party to the contract, it's, if I sold my house today, I would sell it to a buyer, and we would have a contract together. Something goes wrong, the buyer can sue me, right? Here, because of the board's activity in prosecuting these actions, the contract was negotiated so the board can enforce the contract. Normally, if I screw up and don't disclose something, I've got lead in my house, say, and I don't disclose that, the town of Easton doesn't come in and sue me. But for you guys, they will be empowered to do that. They'll be allowed to come in and step in and say, you haven't met your promises. You haven't done what you said you were going to do. And Connor read those words, but just to summarize what they mean, 6 months they get their permits to do work at your place, right? 30 days after that, they start the work to fix the problems. And then all of that has to be done within 30 months, right? And if they don't do those things, then the town of Easton can bring a lawsuit, whereas normally they wouldn't be allowed to do that. And that's why the contract was negotiated that way, because we, as the town of Easton, have a little bit more resources, because I don't know who mentioned it, Mark, I think, about not having a lawyer any longer, Tom Aylesworth. Well, we have more resources than any one of you, right? And that was why that was negotiated that way. So it was to bring someone in who knows what they're doing and has the resources, meaning the money, to get it done. But this is part of that process to ensure that you're paying market rent, so there's sufficient cash flow to begin that process, and they're going to tap their other resources. The other important point of the contract is, when I sell my house, and if it has lead in it, right? I don't have lead in my house, but for the record. But if that were to happen, I could always say, well, geez, I didn't know I had lead in my house, and that would be my defense, right? And another thing in the contract that's written is Crown acknowledges that they know this property needs not only work, but serious work, right? So they have been going in eyes wide open, and yet they're still willing to sign. So they don't have that same defense to say, geez, I didn't know the whole sewer system was failing. If I had known that, I wouldn't have done this, and that's my defense. They don't have that defense any longer. So we were really careful when we were negotiating those terms to make sure all of the people here could be accountable to you all.
Is it possible not to go up that much on the rent, at least to give us a little bit of a chance to be able to even meet that, instead of all of it tonight?
I wish that were the case, but the reality is Crown has indicated that that's what it needs to close, and in order to move forward and get things moving, that's the only way we're gonna get it done
So
tonight.
you guys have already made your decision.
No, the decision, if the board, I have not made, so let's
To
be
be-
clear.
council
I don't
doesn't
have a
vote, nor do I.
Nor does Connor. So we just give advice, and I think the board is just weighing all of those considerations. But I want to represent to you that it's been represented to us that that's the way they will be willing to close.
Can I amplify one thing? I don't represent Crown, I don't have any stock with Crown. Attorney Jeffrey doesn't have any relationship with Crown. So I will tell you, Crown may be willing to work with people who are struggling and can, make a representation about their situation. So there's potentially there's forbearance from Crown. The key thing I'd like to emphasize, though, is that Crown's a professional. There was a comment tonight, it was a good comment, that there's not a property manager who's at the park every day. Crown's gonna have a property manager there. That's what they do. There's a team of people in Crown that deal with rent collection, that deal with wastewater, that deal with water delivery, that deal with the snow plows, the road network, the potholes. And the infrastructure replacement is going to be done on that 30-month timetable, which the town can enforce. But if something happens in September after the closing, Crown's the person that's responsible for fixing it. Crown has the personnel and it has the money to deal with it. And I understand that it's a substantial rent increase, but we're really left with kind of a dire choice. I mean, I don't know. Needless to say, the current situation is not sustainable. I don't have the money to fix the park up like it should be. And the park is at risk of failing. The systems at the park are at risk of failing. So I really don't know whether, I don't see any other practical alternative other than a closing with Crown in the near future.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
If I could say one more thing, because I actually hear it in the background of this meeting and said directly at the mic as well. But for the people who are paying rent, this is the way I view it. There are three people in that bucket, right? There may be people who just can't afford it, right? For some reason or another, their circumstances changed. There are people who aren't paying because they're fed up with the way the park is being run, right? I mean, there are those people too. And then there are people who maybe you don't want living next to you because they just don't ever want to pay their bills, even if it were beautiful, and maybe they have other bad attributes, right? Crown has a team of lawyers, right, who will take care of that situation because they, like you, they're invested in a different way because they, like you, want to make the park successful, right? So, and with that team of lawyers, they can run into court and do the necessary paperwork and follow the eviction process, which can be really cumbersome. But that's why Frank didn't do it, because he, again, was trying to do the Band-Aids, and that was lower on the priority. If you have a sewer backup, you want to address that before getting someone out who's not paying their rent. So, and I think that's what Frank was referring to in terms of personnel. So managing the park, the engineers and construction folks who are going to take care of the infrastructure, and then the team of lawyers who are going to take care of the people who aren't paying the rent. The people who maybe were just fed up will see that the park is starting to change and they'll start paying their rent, and then you won't have them as a problem.
Another dimension
in
is
the other
security.
parts.
And there's the squatters at the
Security.
park, there's
Yeah.
been police complaints.
There's a security issue, not only with the squatters up front, but residents that live at the park that are dangerous.
Well, Crown has,
The police come down
Yeah.
3 or 4 times a night.
Okay, but please don't call out the comments and questions. I'm gonna give one more opportunity for people who haven't spoken yet. If you've spoken already, we're not gonna have you speak again, okay? Are you?
so I think that Crown's team and Crown's experience in other parks will be very valuable in dealing with these very, very serious security issues. If someone's breaking the law at the park, they should be evicted. Just that simple. And the police don't evict the people that are breaking the law at the park. The property manager does. And so these are not new problems to Crown. And the big takeaway I hope everyone gets is Crown is going to be accountable to this board. Crown is going to be accountable to the residents. If Crown is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then everyone in this room knows how to get a hold of the chairperson and Attorney Fedorov and Town Administrator Reed, and they will get call Crown to the carpet immediately. That's the worst case scenario. I fully expect that Crown's going to step up. Crown's spending a lot of money to buy this park. They want to protect their investment, and the interests of the residents and Crown are aligned. If Crown's spending a lot of money to take over this park, they want to improve it and burnish it and make it wonderful so that they improve their investment. So there's an alignment of interest between the residents and Crown. And I'm optimistic that the residents and Crown can create a partnership. And there's a lot of things that need to be done at the park, and Crown's, raring at the bit to get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, like I said, you were one of the first people here, and if you want to come up to the microphone and just say your name and address for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan White. I'm in 204. And I just had wanted to say, as far as the rent increase, I don't know if there's a way, as you talk with Crown, and it's more on behalf of the elderly. I have so many neighbors that just aren't well, physically well. There's no way they would be able to work to get that extra money. And, it's heartbreaking because there's no way. And their children are also poor, They don't live at the park, but when you see the cars and everything and how they're dressed, they don't have money either to really give that assistance.
Right.
So if there's any way you can implore upon Crown, like for our 70 and 80-year-old residents and our disabled, because we have some younger ones that are disabled, if there's any way they can grandfather some type of lesser rent for them just because of their actual health reasons, that there's just no way. We have one neighbor with a terminally ill mother, and he's a young man, and he can't even work. He has to get paid by the state because he has to take care of his mother because she's got all these different ailments. And they just took her, I think, last week to the hospital. The ambulance and fire department had to show up to. So we do have quite a few that just are in dire situations that they can't afford one penny more. And I get what Crown's saying, because I live there, and just like everyone else, we see how hideous and bad it really is, and it's so dangerous. We voted to get that porta potties, and we even got extra ones for the squatters because they were throwing their fecal matter in bags into our dumpsters. The dumpsters we have to touch to open to throw our garbage in. And we didn't want to be sick and going into hospitals because we got sick from it. And, the drugs are 24/7 up there. It's methadone lane all the way. And I can't even tell you, mattresses everywhere. It is just, it's incredulous to see it. You're like, is this a third world country on that street, on 3rd Street? It's just the scariest thing. And then we have some elderly people that live there on that street too, and you just fear that one day something might happen to them just because they live on that street. It's a very scary street.
That's
Yeah.
our fear too, because we have heard this. I've gotten calls from people over the years. We're aware of what's going down there. Our police chief and our health and community services director have been very involved. So I do want to say one thing, just kind of like in an abstract. I think, hearing some of the comments about people who are concerned with their neighbors and their other people in the park, your neighbors up on Rockland Street to come here in support, there's a lot of community spirit there. And I feel such hope, honestly, that, when we move this forward, as hard as it's going to be, it will get fixed and you will be safe. You'll have a place you can be proud to live in. Get rid of the people that are causing the problems, the vacant trailers, things like that. It's just going to take a little time. I can't speak for Crown, but we can certainly pass your comments along, and maybe they have some way that they can make accommodations to help people. But we can't have rents change. The rent has to be the rent. Maybe they can work with people on payment plans or something like that. That's just me saying that. I have no authority over it, but we will pass along your concerns because they are very much appreciated, and it's very thoughtful of you to say that. Did you want to talk also? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Ellen Godden. I live at 305 Turnpike Street, Unit 220. Frank did say that the storage system and the tanks are in severe danger of failing. But Kate, you did say it's going to take up to 6 to 7 months before Crown can do anything.
That's their deadline. So they have to, here, let me get the deadline so I know what they are. So 6 months they have to file and obtain the permits, because part of the problem down there is you're in a protected area too, right? So there may be DEP approvals, and all of those things take time, right? You have to go through boards.
They need to start doing it because I live right next door to it.
Yeah.
I am living in a third of my home. And it's been that way since February, Frank. My house smells like everyone's storage. And now you want to increase my rent for your incompetence? You have been incompetent.
Ellen,
Please,
please,
no, I'm going to state one more thing.
I'm going to ask you
I
not to have any
fell
name calling.
August 8th, getting out of my car to get my mail. I broke everything on the left side of my body. Okay, and I'm still trying to come back from that. He's not going to be held accountable because he's not responsible. Who is?
Crown is going to be accountable.
Crown is going to be accountable down the road. It states Massachusetts state law. He's to take care of lighting, structural elements.
That's what the
pest
park
control.
owner is supposed to take care of.
Massachusetts laws of a receiver of a mobile home park. This is Massachusetts laws of a receiver. He is to control pest control, garbage removal, security, storage systems. None of this he did.
But they can only do with that.
But he's always gotten my rent.
But they can only do that with the money they receive, and if people
He's
aren't
been
paying,
receiving my money.
I know, but people, the whole pool of money is not
It says to
enough.
collect rents. He hasn't been. He hasn't been doing anything for us.
I think that's been commented on and answered. He has done everything that he could short of evicting people.
When I take it to court, though.
All right, I think we're gonna, do we vote to close the public hearing?
Yes.
You have to be
sorry.
recognized. Have the
ahead.
microphone, sir.
I live at 305 Turnpike Street.
Your name, please.
Lawrence Vermette. I'm up front, number 13, the one that looks really nice. We have some people in there that are buying mobile homes for cheap money and turning around and making a huge profit. And they're not paying rent. That's got to stop.
Yeah, that will all stop. All right, can I get a motion to close the public
Dottie, I
hearing?
think somebody came from the overflow room.
Oh, I'm sorry, come on up. Can you give us your name and your address?
Yes, I am Brandon Robertson. I am at 305 Turnpike Street, trailer 302 on 6th Street. I just moved in at the end of June, and you had mentioned, I had 2 points. The first is a question. You said that for 2.5 years they are obligated. So I'm curious what options they have and what could potentially happen after those 2.5 years. And you also, you had mentioned the rent and collecting the rent. I've been there 2 months. I've sent my checks. I have not seen any movement on, he hasn't cashed my checks at all yet. I don't know if that's the case for anyone else, but,
Okay.
so that's just my comments.
So the 2.5 years is they have to keep the park open for that amount and put in the efforts and the work to get that going. If for some reason they can't make it work, people refuse to pay their rents, if there's no way to move it forward after 2.5 years, they'll have the ability to close the park. And there's a process for that.
Could I ask legal counsel, please, to just explain because that's regulated, correct? This isn't. Can you just walk through what is that? And to be clear, the board's not voting on closing the park, but it's a fair question. So what is the process under the law?
So after the contractual 2.5-year period, the process under the law is they have to send notice through various ways, including to the Rent Control Board, including to state bodies, and to all of you. And the process to close is another 2 years, right? So that there's a 2-year kind of moratorium. During that period, then they would have to canvass essentially the whole state and figure out, are there other mobile home parks that exist where your home could be relocated to? And if that were to occur, then they would either have to pay your relocation costs or the costs of buying you out. Exactly. So it would be, the earliest would be a 4.5-year period, because 2.5 contractually, and then the 2-year period required by law after that first contractual period had expired.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. That does make sense. But after 2.5 years, even if they're like booming, could they like decide we're going to knock it down and make better, more expensive, or basically gentrification of the area, and everyone here that can't afford just, oh well.
There is that risk, but the notice goes to the state, and it's essentially the housing department of the state, and they would have the right to take action. And frankly, I would struggle with finding the logic of that, because they could have just not bid on the property, and then the only option would have been to discontinue the park, and then they would swoop in and get it at a lower price, you know, rather than investing all that money in the infrastructure that they have to do on that fairly strict time frame.
And
Yeah,
this was this specific clause, and even Jeffrey, from the procedure, this specific clause was negotiated specifically for, and it was a condition that we put on anybody who wanted to buy the park, which is they had to waive the ability to try to close the park for 2.5 years. So anybody, you know, if we didn't do that, somebody could buy it and the next day, you know, start the process of trying to close the park. We had a specific provision, and the reason it was in there was to provide as long as a window as we could, you know, to keep it as a manufactured home community. So that 2.5 years was an important negotiating point that we put into the agreement as an extra protection for the residents. So it wasn't just a throw.
Ethan, can you speak to the question about the checks not being cashed?
So I know there's been some delays in checks. I can't speak.
I can speak to it. That's my issue.
You have to come to the microphone, Frank.
We have it's 100 units at the park, and we get paid at different times during the month. And I have a bookkeeper that comes in once a week, and her process is to collect the checks in a batch and deposit them. You know, that's how we do the deposits. We don't scan them from the office. Someone physically brings them to the bank. So we do have some checks that haven't been deposited yet. But the park throws off about $20,000 a month right now. So.
But so if somebody has like 2 months worth of rent not cashed, is that possible?
I'm gonna have to speak to the bookkeeper about that. That's not acceptable. But I will tell you, if you write a check, you got to assume whether it's cash or not that money's not available.
So if people have sent in rent payments and they haven't gotten checks cashed, can they reach out to you to make sure those weren't lost?
Yes, or my bookkeeper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think right now, I looked before it came down, we have about 6 checks that haven't been deposited. I anticipate they'll get deposited on Friday when my bookkeeper's in.
Okay. But, you know, with the U.S. mail or anything can happen. If people have not had a check cashed in a couple of months, definitely reach out because the check might be lost. So, all right. I'm going to take a motion to end the public comment.
Is it end of a comment or closing the hearing?
Close the public
Close the
hearing.
public hearing.
So moved, Barger.
Second, Lamb.
So that's Bodger and Lim. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. So we're not going to be taking any more testimony from the public or from Frank. We're just going to deliberate and make a decision.
How will we know when you guys make the decision?
You could stay. You're allowed to stay.
Oh, so you guys will make the decision
Yeah.
now?
Yep.
Well, they may. I can't speak for that, but you're free to stay while they deliver.
But we're not going to take any more comments or questions or anything like that.
No.
I can't. We just.
I just want to know, how are the other residents who did not come here tonight? Are you notified already?
They'll be noticed. They'll get a notice.
Like the same thing with the notified.
All right.
Please,
So
people.
listen. I'm going to ask people to be quiet. If you can't be quiet, we're not going to be able to deliberate. So please. We have to be able to hear each other to deliberate, and we appreciate that people had their opportunity to speak, and we're asking you to please let us talk now. Thank you. All right. Thoughts?
I'll go first. This is an awful situation. I'll wait till I'll wait till they're done. This is an awful situation. It's not a situation anyone wants to be in. As I said earlier, I see two paths. What really captures my concern is the safety and the health risk that you guys are living in. And it's completely unacceptable. And I have a lot of disappointment, like you guys do, with what has happened. And I could go back and I could talk about that and I can grill people with questions, but that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve, from this day forward, what happens. When you talk about mattresses and squatters, defecation, like, it is unbelievable. You guys need to be helped right away, as fast as we can do this, as fast as things can happen. It is just absolutely deplorable living conditions. That's my number one concern. That's number one. Number two is the rent increase. And I'm sorry for that. I'm genuinely sorry. But I don't see another way out. It's literally, Crown has presented us with an option. This or nothing at all. And you guys cannot live under these conditions. No human being should live under these conditions. That being said, I have made up my mind on how I am going to vote on this, and I'm sorry for all of you, but I have to do this.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
So I agree with everything Mark said. It's totally unacceptable and unfair, and it's been absolutely horrifying hearing some of the situations that you experience day to day and the fear. No one should have to live with that concern for their health or safety. That being said, I also believe that this situation we have before us is an opportunity and a lifeline, really, to fix this. And if it's passed up, the alternative is even worse. I don't want to see people out of their community, out of their homes. And the fact you're all here tonight and the sense of community, I don't want you to lose that. And I think bringing in Crown starts to put things on a path where that can be fixed. What I think is really great about the situation that has been negotiated is that there's accountability built in. And I really hope that the conversation continues when you come to us and tell us what's going on, and we make sure that we're here working with you to figure out how to work through this, because it's going to take time and it takes resources, but I believe this is the only path out. I also think just listening to some of the things folks have encountered with the costs of things and things you've borne yourself, bringing in porta potties, probably emergency repairs you've done to your own homes, a lot of those things will start to lessen as the foundation of the park is changed and things get better. So you're not going to be living in a situation where we're just moving from one emergency to the next. Mm-hmm. It's a breath of fresh air. And I think that comes with the situation, the tough decision that has to be made tonight.
I will echo what my colleagues have said. I've been on this board since 2017, so I've got a little bit of history of working with you folks over the years. And I remember vividly Morgan being here and arguing with us about, and we finally decided it was time to go to court. It was time to do something to get a receiver in there so that we could at least begin to get things accomplished. We expected it was going to be done in a year. We never expected it was going to end up being this long. And I can't believe that it has taken this long, and I feel incredibly sad about what you folks have had to go through to do this. But as Mark and Jen say, I don't see any other option. If Morgan walks, if Crown walks away, then the only option is to close the park. And I don't want to see that happening to you folks. So I think absolutely the only option is to move forward with Crown and hold them accountable for making sure that in the timeframes that Kay was talking about, that they do what they need to do.
Thanks, Craig. I guess just to sum it up for everyone, you deserve better than this, and you've deserved better than this for a long time. I'm optimistic that as painful as this might be right now, that this is the only pathway forward. So I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve the petition dated April 16th, 2025, as amended by notice dated August 1st, 2025, submitted by Francis C. Morrissey, Esquire, the court-appointed receiver in civil action, Town of Easton et al. V. Easton MHC et al. Case number 1873-CV-262, to increase the monthly rents charged at the Easton Mobile Home Park located at 305 Turnpike Street, Assessor's Map 47U, Parcel 30, by $250 to $698 to reestablish market rate value in order to support necessary infrastructure repairs in advance of the sale of said mobile home park to Crown Communities LLC, subject to completion of the following items. 1, execution of the asset purchase agreement to effectuate the sale of said mobile home park to Crown Communities LLC within 75 days of the effective rent increase, and 2, execution of the post-closing agreement within 75 days of the effective rent increase. Should such conditions of sale not complete within said 75 days, the board reserves the right to initiate a hearing to decrease the rent at the park or take any other related action hereto. And further, to authorize the chair, in consultation with the town administrator and town council, to prepare and execute a decision of the board to reflect the deliberations on this date.
Second that motion.
So that's Fulgenetti and Bodger. All in favor? Unanimous. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you being here tonight. Please stay in touch with us. Let us know how it's going, and we really are grateful for you for all the information you shared. Yes?
When does the new rent kick in? September? After a decision has to be written and notice issued, so it would be a month from now, or September 1st.
Thank you. And we have one more item on this agenda, the minutes. Where's my agenda?
You have two. One is a set of minutes for approval. The other is a recommendation for a fee waiver under your regulations, given the financial distress of the park.
Okay. So we're still having a meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ma'am,
We have the select board.
we're still having a meeting.
Oh, we can get, do we have a card? We'll get you a business card. And please, someone, thank you.
All right, so the second item on our agenda is to vote to waive the application fee pursuant to 506-5E.
So moved, Barger.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. And the third item on the agenda is to accept the minutes dated July 14, 2025.
So moved, Barger.
Second.
Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. And can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
That's Bodger and Lamb, all in favor? Unanimous. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, ECAT.